Hey, hey, hey.
Hey, Greg. Hey, everybody out on the internet. We're back for the last, pretty sure, the last What's This Bird Live of the year. Merry Christmas, bird count. Happy New Year list to all of you out there who celebrate. It's a great time of year to get out and go birding with a lot of friends. And that is what we're going to do here, virtually speaking. Of course, we're going to talk some bird identification, chat about birds that may be seen around, and spend a little time with all y'all out there on the birder net, talking birds. Hey, we're getting some hellos from folks here on the YouTube. I'm still trying to get the Facebook
That's
thing
all right.
working properly, so
On
give me a
Facebook,
second as
Gavin
I.
says, hey.
Hey, Gavin, how you doing? Um,
Yeah. So,
yeah,
in addition to talking about bird ID, the pictures that we get are from our What's This Bird group on Facebook, where
that's
people
right.
drop their pictures and we in the community tell them what it is and sometimes discuss the ID. We
And
also talk with
why?
you guys. Huh?
Yeah, and we it's this is live. One of the fun things that we do about this is the fact that we are doing it live over a tightrope. No net here. If we fail, we fail, falling plummeting to our deaths like a forced return diving into the ocean. Folks, we are excited to talk to you again here on the birds. We're vamping here a little bit if you can't tell. We've got some fun things to talk about at the ABA as well. It's been a great year for the organization. I hope that you all have gotten a lot of good stuff out of this program and other things that we do here at the ABA. We're thrilled to send this program into another year. We'll see you all in 2025. I feel like I'm getting ahead of
Yeah.
myself here. The ABA hosts a bunch of groups, one of which is What's This Bird, and we're going to talk about some pictures. Man, I
Yeah, we
am
got
off.
Jared Clark.
It's been a
Jared Clark
while.
from The
Been
Rock
a
is in here today.
The Rock. Hello, Jared. Hello from Arlington Heights, Susan Nelson, Andrew Kambauer, Boris Belchev from Lithuania. Hey, Boris. I got your email. I'm going to respond to that here in the hopefully by the early part of next week. Tony Futcher, Marcia Balestri, so many others. Jeff Blanchard, Buddy Campbell, Jacob Meyer. If I'm missing you, I apologize. I'm just
Well, it
running
sounds
straight up
busy.
through.
It's busy over
It's
there on
busy.
YouTube. Facebook is
YouTube
a
is
little
where it's
slow
at these
today.
days. Yeah.
Yeah, so
YouTube
what
is
what
where
I
it
was starting to
is.
say there is we're watching the comments. Nate's watching Facebook, or Nate's watching YouTube. I'm watching Facebook. And if you have something you want to say, you want to give a shout out, you got a question, whatever it is, drop it in the comments, and we will try to get to you as quick as we can. Um, so yeah, chime in if you want. So Nate,
Yeah.
what's
Hey, folks,
have you
let's
done
make
any
this fun.
Christmas counts? What's going on with you?
No, I haven't. They just started this past week. My local ever since my son started playing basketball on weekends, it sucks up my Christmas bird count weekend. But yeah, that people have been seeing some cool stuff. There's a lesser blackback gull that was picked up among the gull flock out at a local lake in my county. That's a bird I still need for my county list that I'm trying to decide whether I want to go over there and have a look. It comes in every evening with a big gold flock that settles on the lake. How about you, Greg? How's is Chicago's Christmas bird count? One of Chicago. I imagine Chicagoland has a lot
Yeah,
of Christmas
Chicago
bird
area
counts.
has a bunch of Christmas counts. Just before I get to that, I'll give a quick shout out to Mia Drive and
Hey,
George.
Mia.
George Munoz, who used to
Hey,
be
George. Good to see you again,
used
man.
to volunteer for the ABA and did some incredible work for us.
Yeah,
Yeah, most of our Christmas counts are bunched up right around here. Going
yeah.
forward, there's maybe two or three more, but most of them have happened, and it's been pretty good. The one nearest me, the one that I did most of, the one I've done the most in my life, the Lyle CBC Morton Arboretum,
Mm-hmm.
had a good year. I mean, I think overall it may have been a little bit down. The weather was pretty crappy and it's been kind of bleh. But the area that I usually do had a good number of birds, and it's been kind of cold here, so the sloughs are all frozen, which means that moving water and there's a quarry with a warm water outlet loaded full of ducks, so that's always good.
Did you get short-tailed shearwater on your CBC list for Chicago?
Man, what a
What an Illinois bird.
what a what a stunner that was to
Yeah, great
and
photos too.
great photos, but I mean, on a, usually you expect something like that to happen on, one of those horrible northeast wind days where you're freezing and it's just and this was just kind of like a almost calm south wind day, kind of nice out there. It's unseasonably warm and just yeah, and then just vanished.
Of all the impressive birds that have been seen at Montrose Point over the many years, do you think this is the craziest bird on the Montrose Point list?
Boy, it's way up there. It probably is. But Montrose also has things like Grace's warbler, and black-tailed gull and European sandwich tern.
Sparrow. Yeah.
And and Cass and Sparrow. But Cass and Sparrow, there's been a few of those around, the Midwest, Chicago area in particular. But short-tailed shearwater, that's probably at the top of the list right now. In terms of,
I can't imagine. I mean, that's like Tahiti petrel off of North Carolina. Weird. That's
or Juan Fernandez petrel
bird
over somebody's driveway in southeast Arizona.
Yeah.
Even though that was kind of, even though that one was explainable, this isn't.
Right. I think it's somewhat explainable. I think something's going. I think the melting Arctic is what's causing these birds to go over the top. I think that what happened is that because there was a huge count, and I apologize, folks, for taking this off the rails into short-tailed shearwater.
Oh, hey, we're talking about birds here. Let's go.
But there was a huge count of short-tailed shearwaters from Puget Sound, near Puget Sound, this past fall. Something like 20,000 of them, and that's kind of over the hump of Alaska. But it's like that's like
right.
Birds heading into the Northwest Passage, and then so that you imagine that there are several thousand birds in the Northwest Passage. Weather starts getting cold, things start freezing up. They kind of get pushed down into Hudson Bay, and they're kind of stuck and trained almost in Hudson Bay. And then from there, it's not too much of a jump from shearwaters.
Oh, not at all.
On a south wind to shoot down into the Great Lakes, and lo
not
and behold,
at all.
We've got them on 4 of the 5 Great Lakes.
And we've. I forget how long ago it was when the Northwest Passage started to open. And I remember discussing with birder friends about what might happen. And sure enough, not too long later, you've got gannet in California. You've got great blackback gull in Alaska. You've got
puffin in Maine.
You've got tufted puffin and Steller's eider and something else in Maine, but tufted puffin in Maine, and I think
whales
that
in Western Europe,
and I think that's got something to do also with the influx of slaty-backed and black-tailed gulls in the eastern part of North America, especially Newfoundland.
Interesting thoughts. Well, have we vamped enough, Greg? Shall we?
I don't know. Let's see what else we got here. We've got Scott and Jeff and
we got questions. We got questions
saying
about
hi.
Bird of the Year. It's coming.
So the Bird of the Year, you will find out in early January what the Bird of the Year is. Nate, I think you're going to give that away on the first podcast of the year, aren't you?
Yeah, the first podcast of the year, which is typically the one that we do with the Bird of the Year artist. We're going to reveal the Bird of the Year there, and then shortly afterwards, it's going to be put on the ABA socials and certainly on the ABA's newsletter that comes out on that day. So if you're interested in finding out, go ahead and sign up for the ABA newsletter, and we'll make sure to let you know on the 2nd of January. That's when it's coming. Or you can listen to the podcast. We'll probably announce it right there off the top. I'm actually recording the conversation with the artist, Sam Zimmerman. I think it's okay for us to announce that. We did that pretty early last year. Right after I finish this. So
cool. Well, let's get to some birds here. I think maybe.
Let's talk birds.
Jeff Marker says he saw a weird-looking spotted towhee in Contra Costa County, California, and would love to have them look at the photos. Yeah, you should post the photos in what's this bird? In our Facebook group, we often get people posting melanistic, leucistic, weird plumages. Yeah, that's a good place to get that discussion started.
SFR Song says European sandwich tern. I assume in reference to the European sandwich tern that was on Montrose Point, and not the potential for European sandwich tern to be the ABA bird of the year for 2025. It's not European sandwich tern, folks.
No, it's definitely not. It's definitely not. That would
not your that'd be it. We've gone esoteric before. That would be awfully off the deep end. European.
Got it. Oh, you know what? I misinterpreted Jeff's comment. He said he would like to have them look at it. I guess he meant he would like to have us look at the photos. They're in the group. Yeah. So yeah, maybe when we're done here, we'll pop over and take a peek.
Yeah. Scroll.
Yeah. So, before we get going, first. You know what season it is, guys, and we need you. We need you to help, man. We're a nonprofit. We're a small nonprofit, and every little bit helps to keep the lights on and keep the holidays happy and keep programs like this and the American Birding Podcast and everything we do up and running. And so come join the club. And if you can, give a gift. We would greatly appreciate it.
aba.org/gift.
Okay.
It's bird time.
First one comes from New York. Now,
would it be Christmas bird count season if we didn't have mysterious owls?
It would not be. It would not be. Now, before we get into talking about this particular bird, in putting this together, I had a theme, or I should say I have a theme, which is something we've discussed before, and it's a very important, I think one of the most important aspects of birding that can be defined in one word, and that is gestalt. And gestalt means something that is greater than the sum of its parts. There have been books about birding by feel, and you've heard all birding by impression. And Mia says, don't forget about the young birders. And I did, of course. Yes, you help support our young birder programs, which is one of the absolute best things we do. So yeah, hit that give button and give us a hand there. But it's when you've been birding a long time and you become familiar with the birds around you, you get to know them without actually without seeing any what people might call identification markers. You just know what it is. And I remember a book that I read about birding many, many, many years ago. And there was a passage in it describing birding by impression, gestalt, that kind of went like, you see your sister walking down a road and she's a quarter mile away and you instantly know who she is. And you can't see anything, but you just know the gait, the way she walks, where she walks on the street, rather on one side or the other. And all of these things that you don't really think about, you know it. So people who know this bird know instantly what it is.
We have people that have made guesses. Even our friend Boris Belchov from Lithuania, because they have them over there too.
Absolutely.
I've given it away too much. Because what they do not have in Europe is great horned owls or eastern screech owls.
But they got the eagle owls.
They got the eagle owls. That's true. Which are two owls that have big ol' ear tufts, and there's something about those ear tufts that is different than the owls that the more common ones, at least as I think of them. Great
I agree.
Owl and eastern screech owl.
I agree.
Ear tufts are kind of almost off to the side a little bit on the corners of their head. When you get these ear tufts that are sticking up, and you can see the ear tufts in this photo, even though it's not that great of a photo.
Oh yeah, directly over the bird's right eye, you can see the ear tuft very plainly.
The rock symbol with the ears going straight up in the head. There's only one eared owl that this could be, and it is the long-eared owl, the Leo. This picture just says long-eared owl to me. It's like slender, like a I don't want to say like column rather than a great horned owl, which is like a big round
Yeah.
head, big round body, ears kind of coming off to the side like cat ears. Long-eared owl's got those two little horns sticking off the top, and yeah, I mean they're just skinny. They're a lot smaller than you think.
They're smaller than you think, and that chestnut face with the thick black mascara, but also the situation. That bird was buried in the pine tree,
Yeah,
just deep in there, and you have to look through the branches to see it. All of that just screams long-eared owl. Great horned owls are big bruisers that are out there on top of telephone poles.
The telephone
They
poles,
don't.
fence posts, out on large
They don't
branches of
hide.
trees. They do not hide. That is true. Screech owls hide. Screech owls I've found in some very, very dense places. The secret to finding a screech owl is to find the one spot on the tree that looks like no bird could ever be hiding in there, and that's where the screech owl is. You ever heard that?
Yeah.
It works more often than not.
But
long-eared owls,
and just going back to great horned owls for a second, great horned owls take over bald eagle nests and then dare them to try to take it back. So
be afraid of nothing.
great horned owl's a different bird altogether.
I've told the story here about the great horned owl that built a nest on top of a pylon in the middle of a harbor in Oregon Inlet, North Carolina. It was an old osprey nest. They had built the nest
took
there,
over an
and
osprey
the
nest,
great horned owls took it over and killed the ospreys to the point where, like, for the entire breeding season, there was a dead osprey hanging by its talon underneath the nest. Is extremely metal, which is just very much a great horned owl thing. They are brutes.
Absolutely. Here in this comp, I put the three of them in relative size to each other so that, when you see these birds in the field, if you see a great horned owl, there's really no chance to mistake it for anything. It's just a massive bird. And Eastern Screech Owl is a little guy that easily perches on your index finger. It's a little, it's basically a floofy robin sized. But it also, even though it can make its ears stand straight up, it doesn't have that sort of, I don't know how to describe those tufts on the long-eared owl. They're different.
They look like they're not part of its head almost.
It looks like somebody stuck them on as an afterthought.
Yeah, exactly. The Eastern Screech Owl and the Great Horned Owl, the tufts look like they're sort of an extension of the head. The long-eared owls look like they shouldn't even be there. Like they're just kind of loosely hanging on. I don't know how they even can control them. They clearly
you could see on the Eastern Screech Owl there how the tuft kind of is an extension of the feathering on the face that goes right up over the eyes. And Screech Owl also doesn't have that heavy black mascara around the eyes that great long-eared owl does. So
you can say that, and everything we say for Eastern Screech Owl too here is also true of the Western Screech Owls as well, which more or less do that.
But I don't think, do Westerns have a rufous phase?
No, I don't believe so. I think they're pretty much.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things, I'll go back here, one of the things you can see on this photo is the chestnut facial disc. And really the only three we have with chestnut facial disc are great horned, long-eared, and Eastern Screech, and not Western Screech.
Oh, red phase Eastern Screech, yeah.
Right, red phase Eastern Screech. Exactly. All right. Let's do some more birding by impression here. So this one is from coastal Massachusetts, and it was recent. All these birds are recent. We've got a gray bird with some black markings on it, flying over the surf. This yells gull or tern to me.
For sure. I actually got this one wrong the first time I looked at it. I'm not too proud to admit it. So we have a bunch of those gulls around here in the east that have this sort of what Amari Ash calls in his gull guide that Greg was telling me. They're called M-winged gulls. Essentially, they've got these black markings on their wings, on the upper side of their wings. The black kind of runs along the forward edge of the wing and then back kind of down the tertials, and then it makes like an M shape on the back of an otherwise gray or white bird. And the M is more or less strongly marked on a lot of these species. but there's a lot you sort of intuit when you see a lot of them. The most common in-wing gull, at least where I live, and probably across the entire continent, is Bonaparte's gull. But this bird does not look like a Bonaparte's gull to me, and so my first gut impulse was little gull, because it is so strongly marked there,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't have a lot on the trailing edge of the wing. But it's not a little gull either, which is even in Massachusetts is a fairly rare. It's a fairly
Yeah,
rare
let's
bird.
let's take a look at the M
Take
gulls.
a look at our options.
So there's our bird in the upper left, and the thing that we can see really clearly is that the bird in question has the trailing edge of the wing, so that the part of the wing that's closest to us is white, and it's white all the way out to the outer primaries. And really, if you look at these, there's only one that fits, and that is black-legged kittiwake. And Bonaparte's gull in immature plumage, where you've got the dark carpal bar there, it's usually not black, although I have seen some that are really dark, but it's usually kind of brownish. Whereas a kittiwake and little gull are black. But Bonaparte's gull shows a strong black border on the rear edge of the wing, the trailing edge of the wing. Little gull can be all over the map, but it usually shows more black in the primaries, and also shows black into the secondaries. So it gives it a real kind of a very strongly patterned look. And then a younger first year little gull, like the one at the top there,
That was messy.
unmistakable. Unmistakable. I also threw black-headed gull in there because in Massachusetts it's certainly a possibility. And the only one that really black-headed gull could be confused with is Bonaparte's gull. Usually they have less dark feathering on the carpal bar, on the on the wing coverts. But the black-headed gull has dark undersides of the primaries, and in this plumage usually shows more white in the primaries, looking more like an adult, whereas Bonaparte's gull has darker primaries, but it also has white, lightish underneath, so that when they fly, it gives a different impression. You see this dark underneath and white on top, with the opposite on Bonaparte's gull.
Do you know that black-legged kittiwake is one of the few birds that has a specific name for its younger birds?
I didn't know that. What is it?
Yeah, it's Terik. It's an old Icelandic name for young black-legged kittiwakes. They call them
I had
Terik.
no idea.
Yeah, I know.
You can also see.
thing.
I'm going to back this up. You can also see in this. You can see the black collar. I mean, you have to. It's like, okay,
know it's there.
yeah, you have to kind of know it's there, but it's there, and you can see it. And that's another field mark of black-legged kittiwake. And I talked to Amar about this last night, and he's like, "Well, why didn't you include the other two M gulls?" And the other two being Sabins and Rosses. Rosses, just because I think it's beyond the scope of.
Good luck.
It's beyond the scope of this. Not in terms of identification. They're fairly easily identified.
They have a really unique wedge-shaped tail as well.
Yes,
does not have a black tip.
I say fairly easily identified with emphasis on the word fairly, because I have seen several instances where little gull in particular and Bonaparte's gull have been Ross's gull have been mixed up. And then the other one being Sabin's gull, and really Sabin's gull is unique, and it really doesn't look like these birds. The wing pattern is just so much bolder.
It would be pretty scarce in December in Massachusetts.
Yes, and that's
gull.
the other thing. It would be pretty scarce. So yeah, our bird in question here is a black-legged kittiwake.
Just a note here, just scrolling back through some of the comments here. Eric Yanyo, happy to say he's been the recipient of a gift membership what he asked for the
Welcome to the
holidays.
club, Eric.
Welcome, thanks. Great gift membership. Makes a great gift membership.
Yeah, so
David
this
Fetcher
one
says,
comes.
why is the tail not showing a fork on the
Oh
referring
boy,
to
that's you know what? Let's go back and take a look at that just for a second. Because when these birds spread their tail, it can really change the shape. And you'll see that the little gull up above kind of has a wedge-shaped tail, but then the little gull below kind of has a square, almost notch tail. That can really be variable, and black-legged kittiwake, same thing. It can be really variable depending on how the bird is flying and how it's holding its tail.
Says, isn't... Sorry, I keep interrupting.
No, go ahead.
Greg. As if our song says, isn't Ross's gull rare to find there? Yes.
Definitely. Ross's gull is rare to find anywhere, except for
anywhere in the lower 48.
Northern Alaska. Extreme northern Alaska.
Yeah.
Okay, this one comes from Glendale, California. And so the bird in question is not the American coot in the back, and it's not the 4 black-legged stilts.
Black-necked stilts.
Black-necked stilts, sorry.
Moving on.
Bliggity bladder. Black-legged kittiwake, black-necked stilts. Folks, you just saw dyslexia in action. But it's the little out-of-focus thing that's flying towards us over the water. And this is another birding by impression thing. Again, anybody. Hey, Amar. Amar Ayash popped in there just in time to miss us talking about the gulls. Sorry, we don't have time to go back to it, Amar.
Sorry. No gulls.
No more gulls for you. No more gulls for you. Anybody familiar with this bird, with this species, instantly knows what it is, even though you really can't see much in the way of field marks other than that white wing stripe.
Big white wing stripe.
Yeah, I mean, but that's it.
Flying low over the water. Dark bird, but not like black dark. Maybe
no, it's got
white
underneath.
Yeah. Can you see the white underneath?
Really,
I don't know if you can. Don't really need to identify it.
Can't see the bill.
The cool thing about this bird, you can see the bowed wings, like an arc, like a crescent moon over the top with that big white wing bars. And I can see it in my mind fluttering across the water like they do.
Yes, and that is...
wing beats.
Huh?
You almost need a video for this one to really do it justice, Greg.
Well, you know what? You're right. But David Sibley does a great job of illustrating it. So let's just take a look. This, of course, is a spotted sandpiper. And you could tell just from the habitat and all of it, it just all fits for spotted sandpiper. And spotted sandpipers, when they fly from one side to another of the small pond or creek or whatever they're on, they do this bow-winged, fluttery, very right over the water. That's very distinctive. And Sibley, I grabbed the illustration from Sibley's Birds Guide to Birds. He really does a good job with that. And really, the only other 2 species, any shorebird could be out over the water on a small pond, but, the 2 that you would expect, solitary sandpiper and least sandpiper. Solitary has dark wings, so you can throw that one out. Mm-hmm. And all the other shorebirds fly with them. What's that?
White on the tail, too. And longer
but
legs,
I mean,
so you'd probably see them dragging them behind.
Yeah, maybe. But all of the other shorebirds have real direct flight, and but spotted sandpiper does this really unique little floating, fluttering right over the water. Now, when they get up and take off, they look like any other shorebird. Then you have to work a little harder. But when they're just going from one side of the pond or fluttering from rock to rock, this is what they do, and you instantly tell what that bird is.
Newbie Thomas notes, saw a spotted sandpiper here in Germany, where it was
Oh,
Almost
that's a
certainly
good
very
bird in
good bird.
Germany.
A week ago, looked so small. The stilts in your photo make me think this bird is bigger. I think there might be a little bit of foreshortening going on in
Yeah,
the
it's
image. It looks
closer
like
than the stilts.
yeah, they really are tiny little birds, and stilts are pretty reasonably large for a shorebird, at least reasonably long for a shorebird, even though their body is pretty small. Yeah, they're not that big. I my sense is that the spotted sandpiper is probably a good 10-20 feet in front of the stilts. Um,
Mm-hmm.
in this photo, it's just a little bit foreshortened.
Yeah, and it's out of focus. The stilts are in focus, and the spotty is in front
Yeah,
by enough that
like
because you can
at
see
five
all of
o'clock or
those
so.
stilts are probably 3-4 feet apart, and pretty much all of them are in focus or reasonably in
Hmm.
focus. And so yeah, you're right. That bird's probably 10-15 feet or more in front of the stilts.
We have a request for videos in these, Greg. We'll have to work on figuring out how to do that.
I've done it a couple of times, and it's more straightforward now. But the truth is that there's not a lot of video content out there. I mean, people don't um, post video in What's This Bird.
Not a ton though.
A few. But video is definitely uh, because I think eBird just recently started accepting video. That was something that they hadn't been doing until at some point this year.
Yeah, a couple years ago. Yeah.
Okay. Salt Lake City, Utah. We have a black bird with a yellow eye. And
A lot of
um,
blackbirds with yellow eyes
yeah,
in the ABA area, Greg, in North America even. It's a pretty common form of
well,
our
and
perching
if
birds.
we're just going to go right to blackbirds, we can discount brown-headed cowbird. It has dark eyes. It's also a different shape than
Hmm.
this bird and has a heavier bill. I should say a thicker bill, shorter bill, more like a finch or a sparrow. Um,
Hmm.
Red-winged blackbird, even though sometimes they don't show the red epaulet, they have dark eyes in all
Hmm.
plumages. So
American crow. Did the
American
American crow in
crow
there? Dark
has
eyes,
dark eyes
bigger bill.
and a bigger bill. And, this bird, again, when I saw this, I knew
Common
exactly.
raven. Are we going all the way up?
Let's go all the way up. Common raven.
They're
I
in
mean,
Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City. Sure, there's ravens in Salt Lake City. Um, so we got the boss is in.
Northern
Hi, Wayne.
Mexico.
Um, so this bird, when I saw the picture, I knew exactly what it was, and just by the shape, that sort of deep bellied, pigeon headed. That's kind of a unique shape. And the person who posted it asked if it was a common grackle, and yeah, I mean
Yeah,
that
common grackles there.
they do get them occasionally. I mean, common grackle's more of an eastern bird, but they do get them. There's also
So,
great-tailed grackle, but
mhm.
um, great-tailed grackle just doesn't look like this at all, and I didn't even include it um, in the little mashup here.
I was going to say, if we're looking at grackles and we're trying to determine whether, any sort of dark bird with a yellow eye in the West is a grackle or a blackbird, you got to look at the ends essentially. So grackle sort of famously has this keel shaped tail, this kind of deep long tail.
Mm-hmm.
Even great-tailed grackle even more so. It's got a massive deep keeled tail. Um, Common grackle is a little bit shorter, but if you've seen grackles flying in flocks overhead, and I'm sure a lot of folks have, that long tail is very apparent. They almost look like ducks flying backwards. And
Yeah,
grackles also have kind of a larger bill, kind of a long, larger bill. And this bird, the bill does not look, even though it's sort of soft here, it does not look as
yeah,
long or as large as I'd expect to see on a common grackle. And again, if we're considering great-tailed grackle, the bill is even longer and larger. I mean, that's a very hefty bird.
yes,
So, relatively small tail, relatively long
and it's got
wings.
that great tail.
Yeah. Well, yeah. pretty good tail. Let's not go out all the way here.
But yeah,
And a relatively small bill, but yes, Brewer's Blackbird is the one that this seems like classic, parking lot lakefront bird across most of the American West, and very similar to grackles.
yeah, but they have that like I said, that small headed, that small pigeon headed, deep bellied look. Now birds are covered in feathers, and they can move those feathers around a lot more than people sometimes think, and they can look like they can really, there's some are like the owls, they can look like a piece of tree bark or a big floofed up puffy thing, like a big basketball or something in a tree. So, you got to take all of this as parts of a puzzle. But yeah, that small-headed, comparatively small build, pigeon-headed, deep-bellied appearance, that is, to me, Brewer's Blackbird all the way. And, like you said, Nate, the classic Western parking lot Blackbird is Brewer's.
It's funny. They're not related at all. European Blackbird is a Turdus thrush, and Brewer's Blackbird is an Icterid, a New World Blackbird. But they do sort of have a very similar. Brewer's Blackbird has a very thrushy sort of look to it, in the fact that the head looks rather small, the body is large and deep bellied, the bill is relatively slight compared to some of the other grackles. So it looks more like a European Blackbird than it looks perhaps like a common grackle, even though it's more closely related to the grackle than it is to the European Blackbird. Chris Ortega asked a question about Rusty Blackbird. How do we rule that out? Time of year.
Well, Rusty Blackbird is a really good bird out west. It's just it's an eastern bird. This time of year, it would almost all of them have some rusty on it. Exactly. And especially around the head. One of the things that I use to differentiate, and you can even almost see it when the bird is in breeding plumage and the males are in breeding plumage, because it's another one of those birds it's black with rusty fringes on all of its feathers, and as the bird gets closer to breeding season, the rusty edges wear off. And same thing with red-winged blackbird, revealing the solid black plumage. But they always have like a black mask. It's like that part of the face never gets any rust colored. It's always got this thin black mask. And once you see it and learn to see it, it's like you can't unsee it. It's just always there. So yeah, I mean,
when was this photo taken? Is it this
recently? I only went through like the last 2 or 3 weeks, so
yeah,
pretty recently.
So any rusty blackbird that you would see, even a vagrant one in the West, would, as you say, Greg, have that rust color all over it, because it's the fall molt that gives them those for that fringing that gives them the name.
And rusty blackbird really is, it's shaped a little bit more like redwing. It doesn't really show this little pigeon-headed, deep-bellied look.
Yeah, the bill's longer.
It's a little bit longer and thinner.
Proportioned.
The proportions are a little bit different. But that's a good question. Good question, Chris.
Yep.
All right. We're just kind of cranking right through these.
Rolling through.
So again, folks, if you've got something to say, got a question like Chris had, or you just want to say hi, or talk about something else, drop it in the comments, and we will do our best to get to it. It's our last bird, so we're going to have to work hard on this one, unless we're going to cut off a little bit early.
Double duck duty, Greg.
It's my double Dutch ducks. So this one is from Gloucester, Mass. And what are we?
Big dark ducks.
It's duck season.
It is.
You're supposed to say it's wabbit season.
It's ducks.
You're just too young for that.
Oh, Yeah, no, I got it. I get the rest
I
of
know
it.
you got it, but it didn't come to you instinctually.
No, you're right. It didn't. What do we got here? We have two largely dark ducks with kind of large. The one on the right has a large gray blue bill. The one on the back has a darker bill and some white around the face. Um, dark ducks on a large body of water. The white around the face is female scop, all the way through. Um, the
Yeah.
bigger duck, the one on the right, is going to be a little bit difficult. Of course, scop are going to be one of the more difficult, one of the more confounding ID conundrums that we deal with here in North America and the entire northern hemisphere, for that matter. They've got scop
Yeah.
over there too.
And there are a few, there are a few species pairs that we talk about regularly here, and this time of year, scaup is one of them. The last show we did, we talked about cackling and Canada goose. And there are a few others like that, where there are some birds that you just won't be able to identify to species, and that's totally fine.
Right.
You're again, it sounds silly, but birds have feathers and feathers move. And when ducks dive, the feathers on their head get slicked back and pushed down. And then when they've been up for a while or they're preening, they can lift those feathers and give their head a totally different look. I think I've shown that picture of the Veery where, in one picture he's fluffed up and his breast looks almost completely white. And in the other one, he's compressed his feathers and it's full of spots. So yeah, you always have to keep that in mind when you're looking at birds. But I picked this picture because it's pretty rare, at least in the group, that we get such a great comparison of greater and lesser scaup. And that's what we have here. We have a greater and lesser scaup. So now, which is which?
Well, some things that I like to think about when I have scaup in front of me and I'm trying to identify them. Head shape is usually a reasonable place to start. Bill shape, the nail, kind of dark spot on the tip of the bill, and just general overall size. A lot of people will say, especially when they're together, you can use size, which is not always a thing you can do when the birds are solo.
Correct.
None of these field marks are really cut and dried. Single field mark that's going to tell you the identification of a given bird. It's more of a collection of field marks that we're sort of looking for, preponderance of evidence that sort of suggests one scaup or the other in this situation. Yeah. And I think this is a particularly interesting photo because one of the field marks that I really like to use for identifying scaup is a little bit misleading in this photo, and that is the nail on the tip of the bill. Typically, in the case of a greater scaup, the nail, the kind of dark spot on the tip of the bill that's sort of in the middle, is going to be very large and wide and take up almost the entirety of the end, the last 2 centimeters of the bill. Whereas in a lesser scaup, it's going to be pretty much limited to that little middle nub on the tip of the bill, where it seems to be actually backwards on this bird. I'm looking at the bird that seems more likely to be greater scaup, and I'm going to just come out and say, it is the bird on the right that suggests greater scaup to me. Not only is it the larger of the two birds, but it's got kind of that rounder head that doesn't really peak anywhere. It's sort of a mallard-like head. The eye is sort of placed up and towards the top of the head. The bill looks very large in this bird, even though the nail itself is not very large. So that bird says greater scaup to me, maybe a young male greater scaup. And then the other one is the smaller of the two birds, so that's always nice. The eye is a little more centrally placed on the head. The head peaks towards the back, sort of behind the eye, almost like 10 o'clock from where the eye is. But the nail on the tip of the bill is huge. It's taken up the entirety of the bill, and I don't know whether that's foreshortening going on or what, but
it could be artifacting. It could there's a lot of reasons that could be, but if you look at those two, which are now the greater scaup is on top, the lesser is on the bottom, the bill size and bill shape is noticeably different. And while Nate was talking about head shape and the placement of the eye, one of the ways I think about it is a greater scaup has sort of a bulge in front of the eye. It's got like a little bit of a bulging forehead. and the lesser does not. It has more of a steeped forehead with a peak in the back. It's almost like the greater scaup's head peaks in the front. But if you look at the bird in question on the left here, so the left greater scaup, the bird at the top left here, its head is wet. It's been diving, and its feathers
it looks like it just came up. Yeah,
and its feathers are pressed down, and you can still see that placement of the eye and the relative, amount of space there. But yeah, it gives a different impression, but still rounded than the greater scaup on the right, which has not been fresh, right out of the underwater diving.
When we're thinking about these birds, it goes to show that you can never really rely on one single field mark, is particularly for any bird, and particularly for scaup. You want 2, 3 sort of things sort of leaning in one direction, because as Greg said when we let off this conversation, there are some birds that are probably not going to be identifiable because you're not seeing what you need to see, or the bird is too far away, or there's too much heat haze, which is always a problem this time of year when you're looking across a large body of water. Sometimes if you've got your scope on those birds, there can be a lot of wavy heat lines. That's difficulty for winter birding. But if you've got 2, 3, 4 field marks sort of pointing you in one direction, even if one is a little bit anomalous, I think you can be comfortable with that ID. And one of the great things about this photo is that the birds are right next to each other. You don't always get that, because sometimes greater and lesser scaup aren't always in the same places.
Right. And
rule
you
of
can
thumb, greater scaup is a saltwater bird and lesser scaup is a freshwater bird. Though that's just sort of a generalization. It's not a
except on the Great Lakes.
Yeah, right. You got all of them. Yeah.
I will say though, like when they flock up in the harbors here in Chicago, the graders and lessers tend to separate themselves. And, the graders will kind of be over here and the lessels will be over here. But there's a couple of huge rafts in Lake Michigan right now. And, the graders are scattered around with, ringneck ducks and everything else. But yeah, I mean, in this picture, you can really see the bulkier, longer, heavier body and just bigger impression of the greater scaup. And, one thing that I did not put into this comp is if the birds take off or just sit back and stretch their wings like they do sometimes, lesser scaup has a white band in the secondaries that stops at the primaries basically, whereas in the greater scaup that white continues out into the primaries. It has a longer wing stripe. So if you see them flying or stretching their wings, that's a pretty solid field mark.
Yeah,
that's a pretty solid field mark.
SFR Songs and YouTube notes that greater scaups bill has more scopping capacity. Scoop.
Yeah. It is. One other subtle thing is that greater scaup, young males and females, and you can see it in both of the birds up here on top, they show a little pale feather around the ear, the back of the auricular, the back of the face. And lesser scaup very rarely shows that. And again, sometimes it almost looks like an ear patch, and sometimes it's so subtle, and sometimes it's not even there. But if it is there, that's usually a good another clue that'll get you over the hump. So that's
the scoop on scaup.
That's our birds for today, Nate. So you guys, we got another few minutes here. If you guys want to talk about anything, if there's anything on your mind, or any questions, or if you want to go back
over and check out that the weird towhee.
I can't while I'm running this.
I'm pulling it up on the search for it.
Yeah, when I'm running the control room here, I can't mess around with the browser too much. So I'll have to look at it later. The Facebook group is being pretty quiet over here. It's been 10 minutes since anybody said anything. Although Gavin mentioned Elmer Fudd season, and for a young dude, yeah, he got it.
So I'm looking at this Tohi, and my guess is that it is. So the question is it a hybrid? Is it a spotted California Tohi hybrid? I don't think it is. I think it's probably a young male, maybe a first year young male that, or a young female. I don't know. It's got like almost like a
I
cap,
know
like
the
a
bird.
brown cap.
I know the bird. I did see
Yeah,
that.
I think it's just a young bird that's sort of half molted into its first for after its first molt. That's what I would
I
guess.
think it's
It's an
one of
interesting
two
bird.
things. I think it's one of
Okay.
two things. I agree with you that it's a spotted towhee. It doesn't really look like
Yeah.
a hybrid to me. But
Right.
as you said, it's either a young bird that's moving into like it could be a young male. But just like with cardinalids and orioles and
Hmm.
some birds, the old females start to take on some of the plumage characteristics of males, and they get
Yeah.
darker and spotted towhee, the females actually are they're more different than the female eastern towhee and the female spotted towhee are really quite different from each other in a way that the
Mm.
males are not. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, they tend to be darker, grayer, a little more streaking on the back. But yeah, I think that looks like a pretty. I don't think it's a hybrid. Just
Yep.
to
I agree
that.
with you. Boris has a question. He'll have the Christmas birding marathon next 2 weeks. Do you have such events during the last part of December in the U.S.? Do we ever? We have the Christmas bird count. And
Yeah.
we're in our 125th year this year of the Christmas bird count. So those are going on. We
Now.
started last weekend, going on through the first weekend of January,
Yeah.
all over the I would say all over the AVA area, but they have Christmas bird counts down into Central America these days,
Yep.
as well. So it's a big deal. A lot of good data.
Len Kopka asks, "What's the current prognosis for winter finch invasion this year?" Boy, it started out like
Uh,
looking really great for white-winged crossbills, and then that just kind of
Kind of
evaporated.
petered out. Yeah. The winter finch report that Tyler Hoare and Matthew Young put out basically said that a lot of birds are going to be staying up in the boreal this year, except for there were some spots north of the Great Lakes, like north of Minnesota, where the crone crop was not that great. So those birds might be moving down south, but for the most part, I think it's going to be a slow year. You're going to get a few because you always
Yeah.
do, because nomadic birds gonna be nomadic. But I think we're not going to get the big exciting finches this winter.
Yeah, and speaking of boreal, in November, late November, there was an impressive movement of boreal owls in Michigan.
Mm.
And there's been one that's been hanging around the visitor center at Sax-Zim Bog, but
That's cool.
it's still early for owls. It's if there still could be a boreal owl movement. So keep your long weekends open to run up to Sax-Zim Bog or Duluth, especially the
It'll be
lakeshore
a while
north
for
of
me.
Duluth, because if the boreal owls start popping up, that's I think the North Shore there by Duluth is one of the best places to see them.
Mhm.
And snowy owls are moving too. I mean, we've got snowy owls in Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, and that's another one that they're just getting started right now. We could still see a good movement of snowy owls for the rest of the winter.
Yeah. John D. Anderson says the pine siskins have come into Western Washington in big numbers.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know that the winter finch report is always not is not very good at predicting some of the movements of those birds in the western part of the continent, largely because so much of that movement is altitudinal
in
in
the
addition
west.
to
Yeah,
being latitudinal. Things get a little more complicated out there with how the birds move and where the cone crops are. But yeah, I mean, like I said, there's going to be a few. I think we'll probably see some pine siskins down here. Even in slow years, there's usually a handful of them flying around. But like I said, I don't think we're going to get the big numbers,
and when you crossbills
at
in
least in the east, I should
particular,
say.
crossbills are one of the winter finches that people really hope to see the most,
Hmm.
and evening grosbeaks and pine grosbeaks, of course. But crossbills are just, they don't move like other birds. I've seen purple finch here. Gavin's mentioned purple finch, and John mentioned pine siskin. And then the other, even evening grosbeak, they tend to move north-south in general terms.
In the east, yeah.
Yes, in the east. In the west, like you said, it's latitudinal as much as longitudinal. But crossbills just go anywhere. They're just all over the place. And they had a big movement in northern Wisconsin in November. And these birds were going, I believe, east to west along the lakeshore. Yeah. And then just disappeared.
We've had some evidence that maybe some of the type 1 crossbills, which are the Southern Appalachian types, are moving a little bit in reaction to Hurricane Helene, which did a lot of damage to a lot of the cone crops and the places where they would normally do it in the Southern Appalachians. And so those birds are typically, in terms of, compared to a lot of other red crossbills, they're pretty non-nomadic. Like they are within the Southern Appalachians, but they don't really like to leave the Appalachians all that much. But there are been some sightings of what are apparently type 1 crossbills in some of the foothills areas in western North Carolina, western Piedmont, North Carolina, and Virginia, that are probably birds that have been displaced because of the hurricane this past fall. So even the birds that we don't think of, the types that we don't think of as being the heavily nomadic ones, like the 3s and the 4s and whatnot, they still move around a little bit. They're certainly capable of it.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we did it again. We made it.
We did
and I want to remind you that 'tis the season. If you enjoy what we do, aba.org/join, or just the big buttons up at the top of our website, any page. Hit the join button if you want to become a member. We would love to have you. And whether you are or not, if you'd like to make a gift, aba.org/gift, or just click the big banner on our website. And make the season merrier for us and the birds and all of the things we do.
If you're interested in knowing what the 2025 bird of the year is,
yes,
go to the website and sign up for the newsletter, and we'll let you know on the 2nd of January, or listen to the podcast.
Listen to the podcast. It's going to be a crazy one. I know that.
Crazy one. Oh, the bird or the podcast?
The bird.
The podcast will probably be the same as what we always get, but
the bird is a crazy one.
Crazy one. We're going to say goodbye, and we'll be back in 2026, and keep an eye out for when we'll be there. I think the plan is maybe the 3rd. We'll see. That's in 2 weeks from now. So put a pencil in January 3rd. We'll be back to talk about new birds in the new year. And thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks. Have a great holiday, and we'll see you on the other side.
Holidays.
Bye. Bye, everybody.